The Blue Maws, why sperm whales get deadlier the deeper you go. 331,000 views, 22 minutes of cinematic underwater footage, reportedly has a comment sitting near the top of its thread that reads, "If just the sperm whales are this large, imagine how huge the adult whales must be." The video was describing adults. It had been describing adults throughout its entire runtime. That comment isn't evidence of inattention. It's a reasonable response to a genuine structural gap in how this species gets communicated on screen. Sperm whales span sizes that run from a compact car to the mass of 9 African elephants, depending on sex, age, and where in a 50-year growth window you happen to encounter the animal. The newborn and the 50-year-old bull share an identical silhouette, the same square, blunt head comprising up to a third of body length, the same wrinkled grey-brown skin, the same triangular flukes lifted high at the start of a deep dive. Nothing visible in that shape tells a viewer the animal's age or sex. Without explicit labels, the species compresses into a single, undifferentiated category in the viewer's mind, and whatever maximum figure appeared in the narration gets assigned to every animal subsequently shown. Most popular content about sperm whales never provides those labels, because most popular content treats the species as one thing rather than 4. Here is what the size of a sperm whale actually looks like, tracked by life stage, by sex, from birth to physical maturity, with the numbers that most content leaves out. Physeter macrocephalus is the largest toothed predator alive. Among cetaceans, it shows the most extreme sexual size dimorphism of any species. Adult males are approximately 1.5 times the length of adult females and roughly 3 times their mass. That ratio isn't an edge case curiosity. It's the biological fact from which every scale misreading of this species follows. A newborn sperm whale calf arrives at approximately 4 meters, about 13 feet, and weighs roughly 1 ton. NOA Fisheries, the Marine Mammal Center, and the New Bedford Whaling Museum all converge on these figures. The observed birth range in the scientific literature spans 3.5 to 4.9 meters. Clark's classical fetal growth curve analysis gives a mean of 3.93 meters, and a 2024 Nature published account of a documented birth confirms approximately 4 meters. Weight sits between 0.9 and 1.3 tons across institutional sources. Gestation lasts 14 to 16 months. A single calf is born. A Ford Fiesta is 4.04 meters long. A newborn sperm whale calf is almost precisely that length, and it already outweighs the car by roughly 700 kilograms. That calf begins taking solid food before its first birthday, though nursing continues for several years. Growth during the first year is rapid. By 12 months, a sperm whale calf typically reaches 5 to 6 meters. For roughly the first decade of life, males and females grow along similar tracks, neither sex dramatically larger than the other, both heading toward 9 meters and beyond. Young males begin departing their natal social groups somewhere between roughly 3 and 16 years of age. Genetic dispersal studies place the median departure age at approximately 6 years. After leaving, they form what researchers have called bachelor schools, loosely associated groups of males of comparable age and size moving toward higher latitude feeding grounds, their nutritional requirements rising sharply as they grow. Research by Kobayashi describes these bachelor schools as consisting of males of about the same age, the social bonds of a prolonged adolescence that plays out over 2 decades. During those years of sub-adult development, these males are physically indistinguishable in body length from the adult females they left behind. A female sperm whale reaches sexual maturity at around 9 years of age, at approximately 9 meters, about 29 to 30 feet. Growth slows substantially from that point. Physical maturity arrives around age 30 at roughly 10.6 meters, or about 35 feet. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game species profile states it directly. Females are physically mature around 30 years of age and 35 feet long, at which time they stop growing. Most peer-reviewed and institutional sources cluster adult females between 10.6 and 12 meters. The documented ceiling sits at 12 to 12.5 meters for exceptional individuals, 39 to 41 feet. But that represents the far end of a distribution, not the typical animal. The 2024 Acoustic Size Distribution Study, published in Frontiers in Marine Science, drawing on over 10,000 hours of recordings from the Irish continental shelf, categorizes animals above 12 meters separately as adult males. Females, by that threshold, cap out at the bottom of the male range. Weight for a physically mature adult female runs between approximately 12 and 18 tons, with 15 tons cited as a working mid-estimate across multiple government and institutional sources. For comparison, a fully loaded Type D school bus runs approximately 11 to 14 tons and measures 35 to 40 feet. An adult female sperm whale is, weight for weight and length for length, a loaded school bus, and she is capable of diving beyond 2,000 meters, living for 60 to 70 years, maintaining lasting bonds with female relatives across decades, and coordinating feeding behavior within her social unit in ways that researchers have compared to cooperative strategies in other highly social mammals. She belongs at the apex of the ocean. In body length, she shares a bracket with a sub-adult male who isn't yet 3/4 of the way through his growth. This is where the confusion locks in biologically, and it's documented precisely in the scientific literature. The 2024 acoustic study found that animals in the 9 to 12 meter class accounted for 49% of all individuals recorded in the Irish Continental Shelf Acoustic Survey. The researchers don't attempt to separate them into females and juvenile males, because the acoustic measurement technique that identified their sizes can't resolve the distinction. They categorize that class explicitly as adult females, juvenile males, length 9 to 12 meters, and treat it as a single population segment. Nearly half of all surveyed sperm whales occupy the same ambiguous size window. The 2024 acoustic study of Mauritius, published in Scientific Reports, which provided the first IPI age relationship for juvenile male and female sperm whales based on field recordings of known individuals, confirms a second distinct male growth phase after puberty, absent in females, that begins to pull males out of this shared range only after their teens. A 2025 bioRxiv preprint on aerial photogrammetry of sperm whales notes that even drone-based visual surveys with precise measurement capability rely primarily on the disproportionately enlarged male nose to assign sex in this size range. Head shape, not body length, is the operative differentiator. A viewer watching footage of a 10-meter sperm whale without those labels has the same problem professional researchers have, and fewer tools to resolve it. The male who survives into his 40s and 50s becomes something categorically different. Male sperm whales undergo a second distinct growth phase after puberty that has no equivalent in females. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game is specific. Males continue to grow until they are well into their 30s and reach physical maturity and full size around 50 years. Data from multiple whaling-era growth studies, synthesized in the 2024 Mauritius acoustic paper, indicates that a male at the onset of puberty, somewhere between ages 10 and 20, represents approximately 72 to 73% of his final adult length. A male entering puberty at 9 meters still has 4 to 5 meters ahead of him. Males become sexually mature at 11 to 12 meters. They typically don't actively participate in breeding until their late 20s. They reach physical maturity only around age 50 at approximately 16 meters. The gap between sexual maturity and physical maturity spans 3 decades of continued growth. A typical physically mature bull averages 16 meters, 52 feet, and weighs between 40 and 45 tons. That figure appears consistently. NOAA Fisheries publishes 52 feet. The Norwegian Polar Institute independently publishes 16 meters and 45 tons. The 2024 Scientific Reports acoustic study gives identical mean figures for adult males off Mauritius. Larger bulls documented in peer-reviewed compilations reach 18 to 19 meters, 59 to 62 feet, at weights approaching 57 tons. At 57 tons, a bull carries the mass equivalent of roughly 9 to 10 adult African elephants, which average around 5 to 6 tons each. One historical measurement stands apart. In 1950, a Soviet whaling fleet operating near the Kuril Islands measured a male at 20.7 meters, 68 feet, estimated at approximately 80 tons. That individual appears in the scientific literature as the largest accurately measured sperm whale on record. The figure is cited across multiple sources, including the Wikipedia synthesis drawing from primary literature. A 1933 South Pacific account describes a 24-meter animal, but modern reviews treat it as exceptional and likely unreliable. A single IWC data point contextualizes all of this. 95% of all recorded sperm whales are shorter than 15.85 meters, 52 feet. The average adult bull's length is already a statistical outlier. Every dramatic maximum draws on the rarest 1/20th of the population. Most footage, most encounters, most recorded animals, including nearly all footage used in popular content, features animals below that threshold. The skull proportions tell a separate version of the same story. The spermaceti organ in the forehead, which can constitute up to 30% of a mature male's total body weight, compared to around 20% in females, continues growing through physical maturity. That enlarged head functions acoustically for deep water hunting, but it was also shaped by a different pressure. The literature states directly that the extreme dimorphism strongly implies that male mating success is size-dependent because of intrasexual competition and/or female choice. Males physically compete for breeding access. Larger males win. That selective pressure, accumulated across evolutionary time, produced an animal that spends 50 years growing, whose females look nearly identical to its subadult males for years, and whose maximum size the vast majority of individuals never approach. 3 structural mechanisms account for how all of that disappears in popular content. The first is optical. Underwater filmmaking relies heavily on wide-angle lenses, and wide-angle lenses produce predictable perspective distortion. Objects close to the lens appear disproportionately large, while objects further away appear smaller than they are. A diver at 1 meter from the lens may appear to rival an animal at 8 meters in apparent screen size, even though that animal outweighs the diver by 3 tons or more. Carl Zeiss's lens optics documentation describes how close-range subjects begin to distort as the camera moves in. The near surface of the subject grows relative to the far surface. Dan Alert Diver's underwater photography guidance documents a specific technique, close-focus, wide-angle photography, in which cinematographers deliberately exploit this distortion to make a nearby subject look dramatically larger. In open water, none of the fixed background reference points that calibrate a viewer's land-based scale sense are present. No buildings, no horizon, no trees, no human figures at known distances. A 2020 review of underwater stereo video measurement systems notes that purpose-built reference apparatus, laser grids, calibrated stereo camera rigs, measurement frames, are required in scientific work precisely because open water images without such systems can't establish absolute scale. As one cetacean size structure thesis from the University of Otago states, whales are among the most difficult animals to measure alive, and a variety of techniques have been applied to this task, most relying on extrapolation from measurement of part of the body to total length. The second mechanism is scripting convention. Introducing a species with a headline maximum and then using the sperm whale as a single category for the rest of the runtime is a practical choice. It keeps sentences readable. It also assigns the maximum to every animal that subsequently appears on screen. NOAA's own species page presents both length 40 feet females to 52 feet males and A single calf, about 13 feet long, is born, in separate sections, without any narration bridging the growth continuum between them. Both facts are accurate. The architecture leaves the viewer without a map. Educational exhibits and wildlife documentaries follow the same pattern broadly. The maximum figure stated once, the full species then treated as a monolith. The Aquarium of the Pacific's species exhibit notes female lengths of 33 to 40 feet and male lengths of 49 to 59 feet, while the Oregon Sea Grant's calf skeleton display places a newborn specimen in the same space as the label adult size, 59 feet and up to 125,440 pounds. Accurate information, presented without the developmental story connecting the two. Lay audiences aren't equipped to fill in that story from the data points alone. The third mechanism is the biology itself. The Burrell et al. Survey found that nearly half of all acoustically measured sperm whales in Irish shelf waters fell in the 9 to 12 meter class, the window that contains both adult females and subadult males. A production could label every animal it films and still present a run of footage in which viewers repeatedly see what looks like the same size whale, because for a substantial proportion of encounters, that is accurately what the species looks like. The confusion is woven into the source material. No formal industry guidelines require scale reference objects in underwater wildlife footage. BBC Natural History Unit editorial guidance addresses animal welfare in production. It does not specify how to communicate animal size on screen. Scale communication in wildlife documentary work remains craft knowledge, understood among experienced cinematographers, but nowhere codified. Resolving this is practical rather than technically complex. The most direct solution is verbal labeling at every size claim. Not, sperm whales can reach 16 meters, but, this adult bull can reach 16 meters. Not, calves measure 4 meters at birth as an isolated clause, but, a newborn calf, and the figure together every time. The 9 to 12 meter ambiguity doesn't exist in a script that names the life stage before stating the size. The Burrell et al. Acoustic survey categorizes that ambiguous window explicitly. Adult females, juvenile males, length 9 to 12 meters, because acoustic body length measurements require that level of precision to remain honest about what they can and can't distinguish. Narration has the same obligation, and more flexibility in how to discharge it. Consistent visual reference objects across cuts address the optical problem directly. A diver or vessel placed spatially near the whale, not close to the lens, but adjacent to the animal at a consistent known distance, creates a calibration anchor that carries across shots. Without consistency, each new cut resets the viewer's perceived scale entirely, because the perspective distortion of each shot starts fresh.
Science communication literature makes the same point in a different context. Side-by-side comparisons with familiar objects, clear labeling, and repeated visual reference are among the most reliably effective techniques for communicating quantities and scale to non-specialist audiences. The technique works because the human sense of scale is comparative rather than absolute. The growth timeline, introduced once and placed early, changes how a viewer processes every subsequent shot. Males and females track together for the first decade. Female growth ends around age 30 at about 10.6 meters. Male growth continues to age 50 at 16 meters or more. A male at 14 and a female at 30 can look nearly the same on screen. The same 9 or 10 meters can mean not yet 3/4 grown on one animal and at or near her lifetime ceiling on another. That single piece of information, stated explicitly near the start of any content on this species, converts an otherwise invisible gap into comprehensible biology for the rest of the runtime. The 2025 Biorec photogrammetry preprint is the clearest illustration of why verbal and visual labeling matters more than footage quality or viewing distance. Scientists working from high-resolution drone imagery still rely on head shape analysis, specifically the disproportionately enlarged male nose, which becomes more distinctive as puberty advances,
to assign sex in the ambiguous size range. If researchers with calibrated measurements can't determine sex from body length alone in the 9 to 12 meter class, a viewer watching edited underwater footage certainly can't. Back to the comment that started this. The person who wrote it was watching footage of fully adult sperm whales demonstrating the physiology and behavior that require decades of development to achieve. Collapsed lungs under extreme pressure, a heart rate slowed to conserve oxygen across a 45-minute dive. They watched all of that and concluded that these must be the young ones, because the real adults must be even larger. The inference was logically consistent with the information they had been given. No label had told them these were adults. No reference object had put the size in perspective. No growth timeline had explained that the 9 to 12 meter animals they were watching represent the most common size class in the species, not a juvenile cohort waiting to become something else. So no, the video wasn't describing juveniles. It was describing full-grown adults, and even that wasn't the ceiling. A newborn calf is already the length of a car. A grown female could swallow that comparison whole, and a full adult bull makes both of those look small. Scale in this species is never simple, and now, hopefully, a little less confusing. If you found that worthwhile, subscribing means you won't miss the next one.